Ini tengah recording this computer. Okay.
Dia dah record dah.
Okay, kita start terus lah. Okay, Assalamualaikum dan selamat pagi untuk program Mushroom. So for the risk assignment, so to discuss about leadership involvement, learning, accountability, and communication. Therefore, we need to define clearly what is the risk and how the organization or culture or risk culture in an organization. In order for us to define leadership involvement, learning, accountability, and communication. I take this philosopher ataupun the statements from Mark Zuckerberg, the definition by himself, what is a risk and how that we need to take a risk in a matters way. The biggest risk is not taking any risk. And then in a world that's changing really quickly, the only strategy that is guaranteed to fail is not taking risk. And then the second one is from Warren Buffett, risk come from not knowing what you are doing, the uncertainty, right? So, okay. So the definition by the organization, in international standard organization, such as Guide 73 or ISO 31000, definition of risk is effect of uncertainty on objective, on the particular objective. Okay, there is other institution or organization define the risk, but define in terms of what is the risk itself. Therefore, from the Professor Frank H. Knight, 1931, proposed that risk is a randomness with knowable probabilities. Risk can be called uncertainty, but the uncertainty cannot be called risk if the uncertainty is a matters to the organization or individual that become risk, right? So defining the risk culture, the culture of organization is difficult to define. However, it is generally accepted. It is a reflection of the overall attitude of every component of management within the company. The culture of organization determines how the individual will behave in particular circumstances. Talk about the maturity of the risk, right? So for me, and then from my readings, so there's a three main layer of risk: the operational, management, and policymaker risk. So the operational, we talk about the so-called OSH risk, environmental risk, and the managerial talk about how the managing towards like bribery risk, yeah, bribery in the organization, and the policy risk, how that we can tackle about the world risk pandemic, to about the pandemic is COVID-19, so-called. And then the organization have the, in the three pillars of the modern business, we have governance, risk management, and compliance risk. So how that we're going to identify this risk in the first place? We need to identify the internal and external source of the risk. So there is a methodology to identify the characteristic of the risk through like the PESTEL method, the SWOT analysis, and so on. So to be compared, the LILAC is talk about the leadership involvement, learning, accountability, and communication. Also in the management system in place, we have the ISO, let's say ISO 45001. So ISO 45001, part of partial, embrace the elements of leadership involvement, and learning, accountability. So for let's say clause 4 is talk about contact operation, leadership, planning, support, operation, collaboration, and improvement. Clause 4 until clause 10 is talk about the PDCA cycle, how that we embrace the element of leadership involvement, learning, accountability, communication in that particular organization. So this is part of the how the risk assessment must be put in, because the risk management must be in the establishing of the contact first, and then risk identification, risk analysis, and risk evaluation, and risk treatment. And then we need to have a monitor and review whatever we do, and then wherever we're putting the risk element inside the organization to create a culture. So in organization, we need to have a risk maturity. So the risk maturity talk about 4 level maturity, session IF, novice, normalized, and natural. So that's my end of my presentation. For us to have LILAC, we need to identify a true risk, means that we need to define a proper risk, the methodology, the risk assessment, risk planning, and then risk management to create a culture for organization to really appreciate what is the risk being identified, and the policymaker taking the output of the risk to make a decision. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you, and we see you again.